Are we recording? Yes, we are. So I'll just say one more time, welcome for this growth mindset webinar. And so I was about to present Melissa. So Melissa Georgiou is a former school teacher who has successfully used growth mindset strategies in the classroom and at home with her own child. She's also published a children's book about growth mindset, which is used and recommended by the University of Helsinki as a part of its teacher training course. And she has also written other books in Finnish and in English about mindfulness. She says her heart and spirit has always been adventurous, and she could never have imagined ending up in one of the coldest countries on earth, coming from Australia. And also I read somewhere that living in Finland has allowed you, Melissa, to reinvent yourself in many ways. And after almost 10 years here, according to the way our cells renew, you're literally a new person, different person. So I like the way you brought that up. So without further ado, the stage is yours. Welcome, Melissa.
Okay. Thank you very much, Henrika, and thanks to everybody for arriving here today. It's nice to see so many people in the room and also watching the recording afterwards. So it's really great to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction and for all that Mothers in Business does. It's so nice to be involved. Okay, I'm having a little trouble now. Can you see my screen change now, Henrika? Okay, great. I have to do it manually. No problem. So before we start, I just want to take this opportunity to say welcome, as Henrika has already done, but also just take a moment to take this time for yourself. You know, close the door, turn off your devices if you can. And at the moment, just mute your microphones. If throughout this talk you have any questions or comments or something that just comes into your mind, don't be afraid to write about it in the chat. Go ahead and do that. And then Henrika is going to have a look through that afterwards, and hopefully we'll have some time for discussion or just general sharing. You know, I hope that I cover most points in the talk, but of course you're very welcome to ask questions and then to share your experiences as well, because probably your experience is something that somebody else has experienced. So it's always nice to feel like we're in the same boat, which we are. So also, Henrika did introduce me, but here I am again, bang. There's lots of my faces everywhere. I am a former primary school teacher with over 10 years of experience. And yes, I was introducing growth mindset strategies into my classroom as a teacher all those years ago. I haven't been in a classroom in a formal sense for a long time, well, since I've come to Finland. And I also do other things like write, I speak, I'm a mindfulness coach. And the main thing is I'm mastering my mind daily. So growth mindset is not something that you learn and just go, right, that's done, tick, I'm on my way to the next thing. It's something that you go like this and go up and down, plateau, you know, rise, drop, all the rest of it. So I'm just learning as much as you all the time. So also, I just wanted to mention that I've got this podcast that we've just released called Finnish Education Perspectives. And this just goes on with my passion for education, and particularly the Finnish education system, considering I have a child who is a member of the Finnish education system. So I interview Finnish education experts and share that on every channel that you can find a podcast. So go ahead and have a look for that. But I wanted to mention it because actually the one that's about to drop next Monday is with a growth mindset expert, a proper growth mindset expert, Professor Kirsi Tiri, who teaches at the University of Helsinki. She's a full professor in the education department there. So I'll just, talk about me a little bit more. These are the books that Henrika was talking about, and I will show you some links to find those books if they, speak to you, and they're also available in all of the public libraries here as well. So everything's out there. So during this webinar, I want to talk about the fundamentals of growth mindset, just to give you an overview of, you know, how it all started and what it's all about. And then reasons that teaching and knowing and embodying growth mindset leads to better parenting and school grades, you know. So it's helping your kids who are in this system for some 10 to 12 years tackle what they're doing with a little bit more empowering angle, and just build their resilience. So, and then I'll end the webinar with 5 top tips, you know, just within yourself. But let's just take this moment. I can't say that I'm a mindfulness teacher without taking a moment to connect with each other, to connect with what we're doing right now, and knowing that there are a number of other women around the world. I know that there's some people from out of the country as well, just connecting in this moment over the same topic. So just feel into that, and just also take this moment to feel into your intention for being here. So is your intention to learn something new? It might just be to have a little rest, just take a moment, you know, whatever your intention is, just try to tap into it. Like, try to get something out of this webinar and set yourself that goal before we even get started. And then I want to invite you to feel your feet wherever they may be. You might be lounging back on the sofa, which is totally fine, but place your attention on the soles of your feet or in your feet, and just feel what your feet feel like right now. Take this moment to just get out of your head and back into your body. And a really easy way to do that is just to feel your feet. You might feel a little pulsing there, and just focus on that space. And then I invite you to just take a nice, deep, cleansing breath. Might be the first deep breath you've taken all day. Just breathe it in. Yeah, and just be. I'm going to be doing the talking for the next, 20, 25 minutes or so. So just relax and just be in a relaxed state where you can absorb what's coming. Okay, so here we go. Let's go. So we'll get started, and I'll just launch into the growth mindset fundamentals. So the way growth mindset began was when Carol Dweck, who's like the mother, the grandmother of mindset, she started researching about student attitudes towards failure. It wasn't about mindset. She was just wondering why some students particularly, and I guess we can just make that humans as well, bounced back after failure and some didn't. So the students who bounced back thought that they could learn from their mistakes. So, and then just keep on trying. It was sort of a particular personality trait that they seemed to exhibit. So then she called that growth mindset. Drum roll, there we go. So then a theory was born. Dweck and her team researched whether it could be taught, and the resounding answer was a big yes. And that's where it brings us to today, because now it's a real buzzword in the education sphere, and of course in everyday spheres as well, business spheres too. But basically, she did this research with a maths class, and she got the, I'm just sorry, Henrika, I can't see. Here we go. There we go. So she did this research with a maths class, and what she did at the beginning was divided a group of students into 2 groups. And one of the groups, they taught about basically the mechanical workings of the brain, how memory works, a few study skills and all of that sort of stuff. That was the control group. And then to the rest of the group, they taught about growth mindset, which is basically how the brain grows with learning, and how, when you apply this to your schoolwork and keep trying, that you can improve in things. So they did all of that and then gave the students a maths test. It happened to be maths. And the impact of this growth mindset intervention was, if you're a person who likes graphs, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this green line is the students who learnt about growth mindset, and the orange line is the students who learned about the mechanical workings of the brain and memory. So after this growth mindset intervention, they redid the study a number of times. And of course, they ended up teaching the control group about growth mindset as well. So they were all on the same level in the end. But they found that when students understood how learning worked and how their brains work, just a little bit of information, nobody became a neuroscientist after it, but just those fundamental workings of the brain and how we learn, that their grades improved. And the people that didn't know about growth mindset, their grades actually declined. And the reason for that is because people without a growth mindset tend to become quite rigid and don't want to try anything new. So when they gave new tests for kids and they gave them the option to pick something harder, for instance, the growth mindset kids challenged themselves to try the harder, different things. And the people who didn't learn about growth mindset stayed in exactly the lane that they were in to begin with. So the outcome of this study was that if we can teach kids about growth mindset, they can influence their own learning. And that was the huge idea of it all, that kids can become captains of their own ships. And that's what it's all about. We want our children, within reason, of course, to be as autonomous as they can. And especially when it comes to school, we can't be there to hold their hands and give them a cuddle every time things go wrong. They have to have these tools for themselves and understand how they are in charge of what they do and that they can influence their own learning. So growth mindset in a nutshell is the understanding that abilities and intelligence can be improved. So have a think about that for a second and reflect on your own understanding of ability and intelligence. Have you ever thought to yourself, I'm just not a maths person? Or have you ever thought to yourself, well, she's really good at that because her father was also a ballet dancer, so naturally she's born with, the ability to do that. So I'd also like you to reflect upon the impact that knowing this sort of information that we do now might have had on you when you were learning. Because I can tell a personal story, and it's not just about the gifts you were born with. In a growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed, and that brains and talent are there, but they're just the starting point. It doesn't mean you have to stop learning or stop trying just because you don't have that inherent talent or that gift that you were born with. But I was just about to tell you a story, and I think that it's probably relevant now, but to maths, for instance. When I was in high school, not doing so well in maths, I remember that my teacher actually told me, don't strive too hard because you're probably not that good at maths anyway, and it's probably best that you go to hairdressing school and become a hairdresser. So that was the end of my maths journey, really, because I actually took it as gospel that I would never improve, because I saw him as an authority on learning, and I was struggling so much in that subject. And to hear that from him, it really influenced my life. Now, I'm not saying that you would say such things to your children, but we do give our kids subtle messages about whether they're intelligent or not, or how learning takes place. But more about that later in the tips section. But by the way, I had the best revenge and became a teacher, and I haven't seen that guy yet. But the day I bump into him, I'll let him know how I went. So let's dive deeper into the two mindsets. Here's a graphic, and I'm sorry, it's not, it's a bit cut off there, but basically a fixed mindset person is the type that says, I'm not good at this, I give up. And the growth mindset person is, I'm not good at this yet, I'll keep trying. So it's not just about positive affirmations. And in fact, growth mindset was made by Carol Dweck, or that theory was born sort of as an antithesis to this positivity movement. So it's not just about going, you can do it, everything's going to be fine. It's about actually honouring where you are at this time, but then working out strategies to get where you want to go in case that you have failed or have made mistakes along the way. So the fixed mindset person is the perfectionist. And I can totally resonate with the fixed mindset mentality, because I'm one of those people, you know, perfectionist. I want to look good, you know, get worried about looking stupid, all of those sort of things. And the fixed mindset person sort of, as I told you before, it tends to avoid challenges and failure because they don't want to look like they don't know something. And then the growth mindset person, on the other hand, gets inspired by the success of others. They go and find out how people have done what they've done and work on doing it themselves. And they see mistakes as growth opportunities. And that's the key thing here, that mistakes are something that we can be friends with, and we don't need to let them scare us off living and life and moving along and learning. So the fixed mindset person would be this guy. Mistakes suck. I wouldn't tell anyone if I made one. I'm super smart and gifted in this area. I don't really need to try. All of these things. And I'm just wondering, as I'm showing you these slides, whether you can identify with any of these aspects in yourself. And then the growth mindset person, he has a different attitude. He thinks, asking questions, yeah, helps me learn. It doesn't make me look stupid. Practice doesn't make it look like I'm not good at something. It just helps me improve. They love challenges. When they finish something, they don't just go, yeah, I'm done, that's cool. They want to keep going and make it better. So I just want to also mention here that it's not, I want to make clear that it's not one or the other. You can't work towards having a growth mindset and be set for the rest of your life. We actually have what's known as mixed mindsets. So fixed and growth mindset are on a spectrum. So we're going from one side to the other depending on the situation, okay? So it's not something to strive towards, and we do go between the two mindsets according to the topic and according to the area of life, and that's okay. But it's just about identifying when you're probably in a bit of a fixed mindset moment and working out strategies to move back towards being a growth mindset person or a growth mindset learner. And I've lost my slides again. This isn't really working so well. So I can't talk about growth mindset without also just touching on growth mindset in the brain. And I'm not a neuroscientist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have an interest in the brain and the functionings of the brain. So the big thing here, it's a big word with simple meaning, neuroplasticity. It just means that our brain is like, it's not plastic, but our brain is like plastic. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, children can be taught about how the brain and learning work. So if we can teach kids about the brain, good things happen. So you can do this with kids as small as 3, 4. As soon as they start understanding those concepts, it's never too early to start. So basically, our brains being plastic means that with repeated practice, the neurons that go towards making us skillful in that area fire together, wire together, become stronger, and then those things are easier for us. Also, that it brings me to the thought of like your own children, and a way to talk to your kids about brain plasticity, for instance, and not giving up is that when you watched your toddler begin to walk, they didn't start walking and then fall over the first time and go, right, I'm done, I'm never going to walk again. They get up and they kept trying. So kids do inherently have a growth mindset. As humans, we're born with growth mindsets, but the study and the research shows, unfortunately, but by the time we get to school, between the ages of 5 and 7, our growth mindset turns into a little bit of a fixed mindset. And that's probably a sad reflection of our education system, because often the testing and the way we teach is actually fixed mindset oriented, but that's a whole nother discussion. So as I said before, with practice, new neural pathways grow. So that means, again, as I was talking about being the captain of our own ship, that means we can influence our brain growth by the actions that we take. So the more we do something, neurons that fire together wire together. And it's just an empowering concept, because it means we're in charge of our mind and brain, both. So the good news is The brain needs mistakes to grow. So this is revolutionary news for, say, the child who likes to cover up their mistakes. When we realise that we need mistakes to help us grow, then we become more flexible about making them. So I don't know about you, but when I was at school, I didn't know this at all. And the way the system was designed for me and in my mind was that when I took a test on something, I just had to do really well. And if I didn't, well, I was a failure. So in this way, things are changing, and we know so much about the way the brain works now that we can use this and remind our kids, and maybe remind our students, teachers, or childcare carers about this information. So when things feel hard, it's just your brain growing. So when things feel really confusing when you're learning, it's just your brain growing. It's just your brain trying to connect the dots about that thing. And I think that's a really nice thing to be able to say to our kids, that, you know, when things feel hard, yeah, it is really easy to give up. And of course, it's the pain-free way of moving forward. But when things feel hard, it's just your brain growing. And that's a really cool concept and cool idea. I love this quote by Carol Dweck, the grandmother of growth mindset, and that is that children who have a growth mindset have this empowering perspective because they see failure as a natural part of the learning process. So imagine if we can see in our own lives as well, anything that we're learning, it's okay to fail at and to be in a situation where we can bounce back from that failure. So you're probably wondering, right, all this is very well, it's all very interesting, but what are the top tips I can use in my home and as a parent and as a person? And so I'm about to launch into my 5 top tips about being a growth mindset guru. So number 1 is you need to, as with all things, examine your own mindset. You can't teach your children about something and then do another thing. So it's a really good opportunity for you to just take a little time to reflect on your own mindset, your own attitudes to learning, and then you can do the work with your own children. So how are you taught about learning? And what are your current thoughts about learning? And then you can think about what it is that you're modeling at home. But, you know, you might even want to type into the chat box as well, like, you know, how were you taught about learning? It would be interesting to see because everybody's got such different backgrounds. And then, you know, how you feel about learning today. I mean, for me, I see learning as a little bit of hard work because it's hard. And it is hard. And that's the thing also about growth mindset, is that it's not about finding the easy way out of anything. It does require hard work and effort, but it's just about finding the right strategies to learn things, or the strategies to do things, or to solve problems.
And that was actually really a good idea. Like, feel free to just share the way, if something comes up for you really, like about how you've been taught about what you've been taught about learning, or how to learn, or if something's been sticking you, or if something interesting comes up to your mind, like.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Yeah, wonderful. Good. Yeah, don't be shy. So number 2 on the top tips to be a growth mindset guru is explicitly teach growth mindset. So if you can remember any of these things, like, oh, when that's hard, it's just your brain growing, or yeah, let's find a different way to try this. Let your kids in on this big secret, or let your kids know that, did you know that the brain is plastic? Did you know that you don't stop learning? All of those sort of things. So you need to explicitly teach these things, and don't underestimate your kids and how much that they absorb and that they take in. Because I know with my own son, for instance, even though I don't think a lot of things go in after I make certain comments, then every now and again he'll surprise me with something like, "Mummy, you can do this. Remember, you just have to do it this way," or whatever. You know, so kids are pretty incredible when it comes to showing you the mirror of what you're embodying. So
yeah, Melissa, there's someone here commenting from the chat. Julia is saying that she's been taught that she's either the best at something, or then she stops doing it. And that's a cultural aspect, I guess she says. And she also shares that she's now reprogrammed herself to try to feel and think differently. And currently being a growth marketer, where growth mindset is part of the job description, comes then handy to her. And Estelle also says here, one of the NLP presuppositions is there is no failure, only feedback.
Love it. Yes, thank you, Estelle. Yes, and that's perfect. There's no, I love it. So number 3, praise effort, not the person. Now, this is a really interesting one, and I'm sure that a few of you have been guilty of giving praise like this. Oh, you're so smart. Oh, you're so good at maths. Woo, you got an A. What are we going to do? Let's have pizza tonight. Now, all of those reactions are very natural and understandable. I react like that, of course, with my child as well, and with my husband. If he does something good, I let him know how good he is. But this sort of praise, if it's not in balance with process praise, which I'm going to talk about next, that tells the child, or tells your husband or your partner, that it's something about them as a person that's good. And when they fail, that means them as a person is not good. So that's the sort of thing that we're dealing with. So with process praise, what you do is focus on what led to the outcome. So when your kid brings back the maths test with the 95% score, which is fabulous, instead of saying, oh, what a fantastic score, I knew you were a genius, you could say something like, this shows me how hard you've worked. What do you think led to this score? And you can even use that sort of comment if the score wasn't so good, if they had a failure, for instance, like a less than 50% or whatever it is. So this process praise compared to person praise is kind of, actually, I'm just going to slip this in here because, education's my thing, but this is the type of testing we do in schools, person praise in a way, because when we do summative assessment, which is a test, and you get a score at the end, and then nothing really is done about the test after that, you just walk away with a score that you identify with, that's kind of like giving person praise. But then formative assessment, which the Finnish system is quite famous for, is this continuous assessment throughout a child's life, a school life journey, that focuses on what's going on as everything is happening, the process of it, and then you can do something about it, whether you need to fix it later or
yeah, thank you, Melissa. Can I bring up here a couple of comments or questions also that are also has to do with this? There's Livia saying that her 3.5-year-old boy is currently struggling with making mistakes, and he gets very hurt and angry. And now she's happy to have learned that that's a fixed mindset. And her question is, how can she make him listen and make him know that mistakes are okay? She says she's all the time telling him how smart he is. Yeah. So apparently this, what you're just speaking about, is really helpful.
Yeah. But I just want to say, be kind to yourself. You haven't done anything wrong, by the way. And it's really nice that you've shared that. And I think that's something that we all share. I also am so interested in this because my son was that type of person, or still is in a sense as well. So even somebody who's really into growth mindset still has a kid that responds like that when something goes wrong. But the only thing I could say is, rather than try to teach your kid about the right way to respond, is just to model in your response how you feel about it. And that's all you can do, because you can't, even with life as well, change people, teach them the way to be. You just have to be that thing yourself and then hope that it all falls into place, because the only person that you can control is you. So just, you could think about, what is it, how do you react? So for me and my son, for instance, when he would break something or spill something, my first natural response is to go, oh my God, I'm going to have to clean this up. Whatever. And so that's just showing how I feel about making mistakes, that it's a huge problem. So it's just been a real process for me to say, it's okay, it doesn't matter. And I understand where that's coming from. I was brought up like that, and it's just my go-to. But also just to, embody the type of thing that you want your kid to then embody later on in life. So thank you for sharing that. It's really, really real. So some sort of praise, and this goes to the question that was just posed. Instead of things like, you're so smart, I can see you worked so hard on this, or even if they bring you a piece of artwork that's really great, you could say, instead of, this is so good, you could say, tell me what's happening here. So there's just little language tweaks that you can make, and of course that you would translate into your own language, not to assess the final product, but try to bring up discussion about the process that went into that product. And I've got one more for you. Yeah, this is more for teachers as well in different parts of the world. Some might say, that's not right. Are you paying attention? Try harder, but that's not right. It's okay to say that's not right. You don't understand this yet. So yet is the key word. It's okay to be honest about where somebody's at with what they're doing. So like I said before, this isn't about this false sense of positivity. It's about working out what strategies can be used instead of, or to try to understand something better. So that's a really important thing. I remember as a teacher, I had a parent come in and say, oh, I'm so worried about, Johnny's handwriting, because I don't want to say that he's not so good at it. And, I was Johnny's teacher, and Johnny's handwriting was absolutely disgraceful. Like, you couldn't read it and whatever. And so I had to sort of explain to her that we need to be honest with this child about what's happening and how to work out to make it better. We don't have to be worried about hurting his feelings to a degree. Of course, I'm not suggesting that you be blunt and to the point where you hurt people, but it's okay to be honest. But then the power of yet is the key. So you don't understand this yet. How can we move forward?
And also, Melissa, here are people really finding this information interesting and useful, and also sharing really open-heartedly their experiences. So thank you everybody for that. And for example, Karen is sharing here that she was very good at school and never got to learn failure. So it was a horrible experience then when she first got to her 16 or 20s, and all of the people in her life told me that she was good at everything she was doing. And today she's had to learn the hard way that perfection is not a requirement, and that she can trust herself, and it takes effort to change her mindset today. And then also Sarah shares something that she finds interesting in her kids' daycare. The teachers do not praise the children's personalities, but their skills, which from a mother who grew up in Japan look a bit funny. The skills include appreciation for beauty, persistence, kindness. Can this approach be called as growth mindset, or is this kind of a Finnish education technique, she asks?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Well, the Finnish system is trying to get growth mindset into the curriculum, and they do have an inclusive curriculum, which is a sort of a, in and of itself, a growth mindset curriculum. So I'm not sure whether they've deliberately done that, but it sounds like growth mindset to me. But yeah, it's very interesting. And thank you to the person who shared about their life of winning and not having the gift of failure, and how hard it is to bounce back when you're older. So imagine if we give that gift to our kids at a younger age and help them, nurture them to bounce back from those difficult times. Yeah. And it makes me feel really emotional hearing about these comments. So that leads us to number 4, which is understanding the role of emotions. So all of these things that we're talking about are often an emotional experience for you and for your child. So when we're in a situation, we need to be aware of what's happening, and that no emotion is a problem. Some behaviors might be a problem, but all emotions are fine, And so to help our kids, we can also ask them, the right questions. How did that make you feel? Or you could say, oh, I can understand that that might feel difficult if they bring home something that's, you know, a failure, or when they fail. For the person who was talking about their 3.5-year-old feeling angry, which is totally normal, by the way, but, you know, oh, I can see you're feeling really angry. You know, I felt angry about that when it happened to me. But the other questions that you can ask your children when it comes to learning is, after school, what did you struggle with today? So that's the way to invite talking about growth mindset and talking about mistakes and talking about struggles into your home. So if there's a failure, instead of being really strict and punishing your child, you could ask, what would you do differently next time? So that's a really powerful question, to put the responsibility back on the child's shoulders to decide how they want to move forward with their life. So that's my other top tip. Also related to that is, let your kids have brain breaks, which the Finnish system is very famous for, a 15-minute break every 45 minutes. So brain breaks include sleep as well. So sleep is just the fix-all for lots of growth mindset related issues, actually, because if you've had enough sleep and you can get yourself back into a relaxed state, you're more open to a growth mindset bounce back or learning. And tip number 5, we're at the end of it, is celebrate mistakes. So, you know, I'm not talking about having the full pity party or anything like that, but just talking about mistakes as if they are absolutely a part of life, which they are. You could also talk about, you know, if the topic comes up and it's really directed about mistakes, about all of those famous people that your children might know about. I'm thinking people like Michael Jordan, I'm showing my age probably, Walt Disney. They all made terrible mistakes in their lives and drastic failures. Einstein tried things 1,000 times before he came up with the one answer. All of these people that we see the success side of, and society is to blame for that, actually went through a whole period of mistakes in order to get where they are today. But having a culture of mistakes being, this isn't my words, by the way, it's Pamela Seder, who is a growth mindset in maths expert, says that mistakes are expected, respected, and then inspected. So let's, you know, nut out what went wrong, and then corrected. So this is not about making mistakes and going, oh, fabulous, mistakes happen, that's life, da, da, da. It's about also repairing what happens, and that's life as well. So it's okay to have emotional breakdowns. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have a fixed mindset. But is it possible to repair that situation and then, you know, correct it? So I just want to remind you again that we're talking about not trying to go just be a growth mindset person and that's life. It's about just noticing that when you're erring towards a fixed mindset, and can you push that little arrow back over towards the growth mindset when you notice it. Okay, you can move from one to the other according to the context. And in some cases, in fact, you need a fixed mindset. So, you know, we're not saying that one is bad and one is good. It's about embodying growth mindset in order to help you bounce back from things. So then finally, have a think about your takeaways. There might be a few more comments and, you know, takeaways in the comment box, but feel free to write those down. What can you take straight into your home after participating in this webinar? And I really want to honour you for still being here. If you are still here, good on you. And, you know, what do you think you can commit to? So have a think about that yourself. And then finally, if you maybe, Henrika, you can put this in the chat box or send it out with the email afterwards. But if you want to have a look at any of those books that I've written about mistakes, the Finnish versions are available in the hard copy, but I'm pretty sure there's no English left, so it's just a PDF. But anyway, have a look in my little shop where I sell all of these things that I make and see if there's anything that you know, you want to support me with. But also they're available in all of the libraries across Finland, so you can find them there. And you can find me at my website, melissageorgiou.com. But maybe Henrika can share that as well. And
yeah, I will share that. Yeah, I will share that as well. And also feel free to still keep just sharing. You can ask any questions. You can open your mic or share your questions now here in the chat box. And in the meantime, there was someone here, Estelle was sharing that she read an article many years ago where the author said, as parents, we like to tell our children how good they are at dancing, drawing, or etc. But those, even though positive, are still all value judgments. So what they recommended in that book was to instead say, instead of saying, oh, you're so good at, or you did that so well, sometimes even just say, hey, I love watching you do this.
Yes.
Where you would then speak about your own emotion and feeling about
Yes.
that, how much you appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Estelle. What a great tip. I love that. I love that. I love watching you do that. And it's so heart-opening as well. You feel happy saying it. So yeah, what a great tip. Wonderful.
And Julia still comments, has a question actually. Can growth mindset be reinforced not only during failures, but also in situations like tantrums?
Oh, can you give me an example or a little bit more information? So okay, first of all, maybe you can type a little bit more into the chat about that, Julia, or speak if you
you can also open your mic, Julia, if you want to, or if someone has a
yeah, sure. Sure. Hi, greetings from this side of the screen. Yeah, so basically wanting to understand in what kind of situations or in what context could I apply growth mindset or reinforce it at home or help my child adapt the growth mindset and have that important conversation with her. So I just wanted to bring that beautiful message you explain now into more kind of tangible context on day-to-day situations. So of course you've said a few examples, like, you know, you get a bad grade at school, or you drop a glass, or, you know, something happens. But then maybe a couple more examples on those hands-on situations that we experience day to day where a growth mindset could be applied. And by tantrums, I meant the situations when, you know, it's out of control and the child is misbehaving or testing borders or testing parents or so just to hear some maybe other context where it could be applied.
All I could say is a great thing to talk about your, like, just when you're going to bed with, you know, putting your child to bed with, that I do with mine, is, you know, what was really hard today and what was really easy for you today, like, just so that they can see the difference between what a struggle is and things that are not, you know, not as hard, that are easy, that come naturally to them. But also I just wanted to say that tantrums are definitely not teaching moments ever. So if there's a tantrum, forget about being a growth mindset guru, just be there. That's all you can do. And that's kind of growth mindset in itself, and growing within yourself and just being open and just accepting. So yeah, I think that's the best gift you can give your kids, just to be there and to let them know that they are okay as they are, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice. And also then to wait for that moment when you can connect with them later on. And then you can still also ask, what was difficult for you there? Or share your own, like, hey, this was hard for me actually. Or, you know, I found it difficult because I didn't really know, you know, what you wanted to tell me, or I couldn't figure it out because there was so many emotions, for example. So speaking about it afterwards.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, because apparently a coach doesn't go into the dressing room and totally get angry at the team after they've lost. They wait a little bit of time. But yeah, that's really a good point.
And someone here is sharing, Minna is sharing, I realized that I tend to hide my own mistakes as I don't like failure. So a takeaway from this webinar, thank you for sharing it, by the way, is to acknowledge my mistakes openly to my kids so that they can see that adults too can make mistakes.
100%. So good, Minna. That's exactly it. What a great takeaway. Yes.
And also there were questions here. Is growth mindset used in organizations, at work? Sounds like it would be a useful tool for managers, says Ira. And someone here is replying, Johanna says, at Microsoft, growth mindset is used.
Okay, go Microsoft, little plug. Yeah, it's definitely a good business tool. I mean, it's just a theory, isn't it? And that's all it is. But when you embody certain theories, then you can go places with it. So
Yeah, I like the way you put that. When you embody certain theories, so that you make them come alive in your own life.
Yeah.
And there was something I really loved also what you said. I mean, everything. Thank you for sharing, because there are so many good tips and so many good insights. I really like that you also went back several times to the fact that it's not an either or. It's not, because this is what I hear people getting sometimes stuck into. And even myself, when I heard first about these concepts, I was like all the time thinking, as we humans do, this whole either or thing. So am I this or that? And it's not always really like very well explained everywhere. Or we just don't take the time to understand, or to go deep enough to just really grasp the whole thing of, so how do we go from fixed to growth, and that it's okay to come back to fixed, and to just notice it mindfully when we see ourselves again with this subject being, oh, I'm here again. I already thought I was in the growth zone here. How come?
Yeah, life has a way of reminding you that it's never as you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, good point.
And a lot of comments here again. Karen talked about the tantrum. She first tries to take her girl's hands and take a deep breath with her. Afterwards, they can discuss what's the issue and how they can solve it. But that doesn't work with her older kid. And Livia shares the lesson she learned is that it doesn't matter how often. She tells her child it is okay to make mistakes when she herself doesn't let herself make mistakes. So about the mirroring thing, that's her takeaway. Yeah. And Julia says, when I say my daughter is mini-me, I have to acknowledge that she actually really is mini-me, mirroring my behavior and how she deals with her emotions. Great takeaway.
Yeah. Wow. Some really nice insights and some very brave sharing.
Yeah. And also I really loved, Melissa, that when things feel hard, it's just your brain growing. Yeah. I love that. That's such a good reminder, like for ourselves, because when we start feeling overwhelmed, or when we feel stressed out, or when we're just getting exhausted by some things, one possible option as well, or something we can remind ourselves once we take a deep breath and just pause for a while, is that like, hey, when things feel hard, it's just my brain growing.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sure.
Sorry. Yeah, I just decided to go ahead and unmute myself and get out of the box here. But yeah, I had a question to you that, of course, now it really comes to the point where I have to realize that this is also a lot about my own growth mindset, not just my child's, before I'm actually able to teach growth mindset to my child. So question to you, a lot of the time, the things that we're going through as adults, failures we go through the day or a week, we may be it's not necessarily something our kids can watch or observe. It's just happening on the background in our, work and so forth. So how can we, translate that, what's happening in our brain or life or feelings? How can we actually show that to kids? Is it all just through, conversation and constantly remembering that, okay, at the end of the day, I have to share the story with my kid? Or is there some other ways, or some games, or some kind of fun checkups we can do with kids to constantly also show or lead by example with them?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And it's true. There's a lot that our kids don't see. And I'm an advocate of actually, making sure that our kids do see things, even the hard stuff, and then repairing. So just as a little aside, like when I argue with my husband, for instance, I'm not afraid to argue in front of our son, but also I want him to see us repairing whatever we've argued about as well, not have it behind closed doors. So it's hard though, because sometimes, of course, our life does happen when they're at school or daycare or whatever. So all I would say is, again, just from my own experience, that my husband has this really sweet way of telling my son stories. Like he'll say, hey, I've got to tell you a story about what happened today. And, you know, my son's like, tell me, what is it? What is it? Because people love stories. I mean, we all love stories. So you could sort of make it a fun thing where you share particular stories about these particular things you want to share with your child. I would say that. And then if your child is really young, another thing, of course, that you could do is sort of like role playing or that type of thing. Say, I want to, you know, engage with you in this way about it. But yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else. No other pearls of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia says thank you.
No problem.
So feel still free to, we've got a couple of minutes left here, so feel free to just ask any questions or open up your mic. Maybe Estelle has something to say or ask.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I'm not sure if I'm Melissa. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you know, this idea of growth mindset, it goes with, you have to realize that if you don't have a growth mindset, you have a fixed mindset. And a lot of these other ideas, things that we've been talking about is, it has to do with that fixed mindset. And I think what you just said about, you know, telling your child a story about what happened to you during the day, I think that's a really good way of making this a part of your child's life, because as a child, we have this perspective of our parents, and that's something that gets fixed when you are a young child. You don't always realize that. Sorry, my son is here. You don't always realize that they are also people. They also experience emotions. They also have things that are difficult. They also are sometimes afraid and don't know how to handle a situation. And I think that's one of the pivotal things that you can already, if you do that, you already do a lot, is to show your child that I'm also still growing. And I learn from you as much as you learn from me. And the other thing that came to mind is, with young children, how do we teach them these things? I think it is important, yes, to talk to them about it and make a point to teach them, because most of us didn't learn this stuff when we were kids. But the other thing is also, they learn so much only from how we react when they are struggling, when they have a tantrum or they cry or something. The way you react to it, your response already shows them you either don't, what's the word? Now my English left me. But whatever happened just now, mom approves of it or she doesn't.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have to have either one of those. You don't have to approve or disapprove.
Yeah.
Neutrality is sometimes a very a place where a lot can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
If that makes sense.
100%. And I want to thank you for your excellent contributions to this conversation, Estelle. I really, really appreciate them.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad I thought.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's a really good point as well about the neutrality. Like, that's also a really nice spot, and it's a nice spot to get into yourself. So, you know, and then for kids to see that neutrality as well, it's really, really nice and really important.
Yes, absolutely. I used to say to my students, for everybody else who's listening, I was a teacher for many years. And I always said to them, when they say this is too difficult, I would say, could we agree to just call it challenging? I know it feels like it's difficult, but could we just put a pin in that? Because saying no, it's easy, it makes it worse, because now you don't understand that I'm really struggling with this. But just put that on hold, that feeling of this is difficult. Would you be okay with calling it challenging? And usually they would say yes, and then they respond well, because then you can see, okay, now it's something totally different.
Yeah, another really good tip.
I love that. I love, because there's the connecting, compassionate, empowering part in it, because I feel seen and heard when you say that. And then there's like, oh yeah, but a challenge, I can take care of that. That comes more naturally than if I'm just like, hey, she doesn't even get it that I'm struggling.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you still have other questions, you can still tap the last questions in the box, chat box, or still open your mic and say something. In the meantime, I'm just going to leave this this slide here so that you can take a picture of it or a screenshot. These are the events in May for the Mothers in Business International events in English in May. So there are lots of different kinds of good stuff coming around maternal mental health, around becoming bilingual, how to make organizations more diverse and inclusive, motherhood and entrepreneurship, moms talk, where you can come show up and talk about anything and ask anything with other moms in business. And also language cafes, practicing languages. There's a webinar about conscious couples and multicultural relationships. And there's, by the end of the month, multilingual speed dating to network and meet other like-minded mothers. There's many people here are saying thank you so much. It was very interesting, amazing topic. Amazing event with an important topic, a very rewarding webinar. And Estelle was asking, could you please post an email address to contact someone about these webinars? So yes, I can. Thank you so much. Very useful, very insightful. Estelle, you can also connect with me, for example, on LinkedIn. My name is Henrika Tonder. I can't just copy my LinkedIn here because I'm afraid to lose all of it, but I'll just write my name here.
I can.
And also here you can have some of these, some of the ways to contact Mother in Business. You can find contact info on the website. And this is the Facebook, and then you can also send that message to hello, and that will be sent forward. So maybe you can take a screenshot of this as well, Estelle. So I see no more other questions coming in. Thank you, Melissa, so much for this super useful, interesting, and hands-on practical stuff that I know you both explore, integrate, embody, study, learn, fail, get great at, and then realize, oh, there's still so much to learn. And that's what I love about you, because you're a walking, talking growth mindset, mindfulness teacher who actually really does the stuff she talks about. And in addition, such a warm, sparkling, joyful person, spreading all of that around you. So thank you for being you, and thank you for sharing all of this. And Estelle underlines that, yes, she walks the talk.
All right, yes. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for coming, and see you in our next events. Where do I stop recording? Oh, here.